Let's just start with your reaction to JD Vance as Trump's pick as running mate and as potential vice president.
Well, it's funny. You were right. I was listening to you. It wasn't that much of a surprise to me. But I do believe this is very, very good, I would say, for the Democrats right now. I think his views on women, I think women voters are really going to carry this. So I think what they're going to do, they're going to attack JD Vance on multiple policy situations where he's flipped. They're going to attack him on what he said about Trump before. But I think what this really does for the Democrats is I think they're actually going to look at his issues on women. And I think it actually helps the Democratic ticket. I wasn't surprised, but I did think he might go another route, maybe a Nikki Haley route or a female vice president. But I think with JD Vance, I actually think it helps the Democrats based on what he said about women's issues and things of that nature.
You, an author yourself, you co-authored a book with Hunter Walker titled The Breach, which was published in October 22, all about January the 6th, Denver. You're also, someone who feels that you were jettisoned from your own party for having officiated a same-sex marriage. So you've got an interesting relationship with the Republicans and put that out to our audience. But I do want to make sort of use of your expertise when it comes to cyber, to intelligence, to ultimately the risks that we heard coming from JD Vance about China. And whether you think that is something to be standing upon, whether that is something that you agree with as a key concern, and whether it will be tackled by the Republicans.
Regardless of JD Vance's views, say on January 6th as an election denier or what he does, the fact is China is a bipartisan, there's sort of a bipartisan support to look at China as a threat that they are. And, we talked about, stealing IP. We've talked about things like that with China. When you're talking about their AI development or they're talking about their technical development, I think we have to be very careful about the regulatory structure here in America when we're talking about AI development, tech development, as far as China is concerned. I think actually, JD and the Dems, both sides really have some valid concerns about China. I just wrote an op-ed that I'm trying to get in about Chinese drones and the bill and Americans that use them and actually law enforcement agencies that use them and how they can be used as collection sources. So I do think right now, I was on the China task force in Congress. I do believe that China is the one bipartisan issue where everybody can gel together. And regardless of their past views or things like that, I think that the specific China issue is something we really have to worry about.
Congressman, one interesting point that our correspondent raised on the ground in Milwaukee is how much President Trump will or will not listen to his vice president pick. One policy area, for example, is big tech and antitrust. This is Bloomberg Technology, after all. And Mr. Vance's position has been quite clear. He thinks that big tech should be broken up, that there is too much power, and he's aligned with the FTC. Other parts of the conservative movement want to see shrunk regulators and shrunk agencies. How do you think that will play out?
I don't actually think it's going to be one of the bigger issues when we're going into the election. I think afterwards, if the Trump administration is to win, I think it's going to be actually a bit of a war on antitrust with big tech. I've had my own issues with big tech, especially algorithmically and what they do in that environment. My company actually looks at some of this. We're looking at social media platforms and disinformation and how to use AI and graph neural networks to track those. So I do believe right now when you're talking about antitrust and tech, I think that is going to be one of the biggest things that we talk about after the election on how we either regulate, if we break them up, or, if we look at some kind of algorithmic solutions, or we're looking at some other ways to see what's happening with big tech and how they're actually manipulating information. But I don't know if the antitrust stuff is going to go a long way. But I do think there is going to be a reckoning when it comes to how algorithms are used, how people are targeted, and what disinformation and things look like on big tech platforms. So that's really my opinion on it. It's a very complex topic, as you both know, but I do believe that that's probably going to be one of the lesser things they talk about during the campaign. But after whoever wins, I think there is going to be a reckoning with big tech on how we actually look at what they're doing on those platforms.
Denver, you've brought us a lot of complexity, Congressman, more broadly, to your views of what might hinder or propose and be a positive force for JD Vance. But as a founder yourself, does it make you positive that he's someone who understands venture capital and investing?
Actually, he doesn't make me confident at all. When you think about where he's come from, what he's done, yes, he's 39. He wrote a book. And I am a founder. I am looking at venture capital, right? I do have investors. JD Vance in the business side doesn't make me confident at all. I really don't think he knows what he's talking about in most respects. So I hate to be that blunt. But again, I think you're going to look at the staff around whatever president is elected. That's the people that actually do the policy making. I think JD Vance is there specifically to get votes, maybe in rural areas. Maybe they did polling. I don't think he's there for any of his business or technical expertise. I think he's simply there because he's presenting a vision of what MAGA policies look like in the future. And I don't think it really has to do with his business acumen at all. And sorry if I'm blunt about it, but that's how I feel about it.